Ladies and gentlemen, in the once proud but now thoroughly humiliated Republic of Zimbabwe, freedom is not just a casualty. It is a bad joke told behind closed doors by men who know they have already lost the moral argument but refuse to surrender their stolen privileges that cushion their poshy lives. This week we were served yet another insult to our intelligence and to the very idea of a free society. Honorable Job Sikhala, a man who knows firsthand what it means to be devoured by the carnivorous beast of political detention, was shamelessly denied access to visit journalist Blessed Dara Mhlanga, who remains rotting behind bars at Harare Remand Prison. Yes, in the fantasy world of Second Republic reforms, seeing a jailed journalist is apparently a greater threat to national security than looting millions of dollars in broad daylight. The report came straight from Sikhala himself, who detailed how he arrived with the respected company NDWG Northern Region Facilitator Dr. Uraya Izembe, Tauya Chinama, Isaiah Ndawana, and Tangai Chipangura from the AMH media stable, only to be stonewalled by a trembling prison officer who, after some bureaucratic throat clearing, finally confessed.
We have come here to come and visit Blessed Mhlanga. We were expecting us to see him, but unfortunately, the officer in charge, he told us that he has been instructed that we should not be allowed to see Blessed Mhlanga. He said the instruction has come from the top, and the people at the top of the prison services have been given instructions that Job Sikhala must not be allowed to see Blessed Mhlanga. However, it has been my desire for me to see him. He is a brother, he is a journalist, and these matters are human rights issues. And as they are human rights issues, we cannot be found wanting as the citizens of this country, while we just live at our homes without being concerned about Blessed Mhlanga's current prison conditions. I am concerned and worried about the conditions that Blessed Mhlanga is living under.
The orders came from the top, not just from the warden, mind you, but from the Commissioner General of Prisons himself, the illustrious Moses Chuvu, whose greatest claim to fame now seems to be the ability to block visitors faster than a paranoid village gossip. Because apparently allowing two men who have suffered under the regime's cruelty to simply speak to each other could cause the entire house of cards they call a government to collapse overnight. These are the people in charge. Sleep tight, Zimbabwe. Perhaps they thought Job Sikhala is still an inmate and were treating him like an inmate. Of course, it would be funny if it weren't so grotesque. Imagine for a second the mental gymnastics involved. The regime that claims Zimbabwe is open for business cannot even allow a journalist and a politician to meet through a glass window with a prison guard standing right there. They fear solidarity more than they fear international sanctions. They fear a whispered word of hope more than they fear the economic collapse they themselves engineered. They fear men like Sikhala and Blessed Mhlanga, not because they have guns or armies, but because they have something far more dangerous: the truth. But let's not let this moment pass without savoring the thick, creamy irony of it all. For months, even years, Trevor Chuvu and his intellectual brigade, polished, perfumed, and armed with blue-ticked Twitter accounts, loved to accuse Nelson Chamisa of not doing enough to help Job Sikhala. They howled from their comfortable leather chairs about Chamisa's inaction, painting themselves as the true defenders of liberty, sipping lattes while others endured tear gas. They suggested that if they were in charge, things would be different, braver, smarter, more strategic. Well, how many days has it been now since their own blessed Mhlanga was arrested doing what journalists are supposed to do? Asking hard questions, exposing uncomfortable truths. How many days of timid tweets and half-hearted press statements? How many days of hollow outrage without even one meaningful mobilization, one legal breakthrough, one show of power? We are talking about Trevor Chuvu here, who was once an advisor to the president, and his partner, who is an in-law, a son-in-law of the president of the republic. Suddenly, they find out that in Zimbabwe's dictatorship, moral outrage doesn't move prison gates. Even today, Job Sikhala can see that it was not Chamisa neglecting him in prison. It was the system that made sure he was inaccessible. Twitter threads don't unlock handcuffs. Instagram posts don't rattle the cold steel of the regime's cages. Today they watched Sikhala himself, the man they accused Chamisa of ignoring, being turned away like a dog from the door of Harare remand prison. And if they have any sense of decency left, they would realize that it was never Chamisa's failure that kept Sikhala inside. It was the dictatorship's cruelty. It was the deliberate, calculated, sadistic machinery of ZANU-PF's so-called new dispensation that made sure no help could reach him. And if ZANU-PF lied to you guys and said Chamisa could have spoken to Mnangagwa for Job Sikhala to be released, don't you see anything wrong with that statement? Courts must do their jobs. If he is in prison, if he is incarcerated, courts must just do their job properly. But no, it was easier to blame the opposition than to confront the true monster, wasn't it? Easier to attack a few brave souls still standing than to take the regime head on. Trevor Chuvu and his polished newspaper magnates are learning the hard way that the crocodile bites the hand that claps for it just as easily as those that slap it. Blessed Mhlanga's imprisonment is a chilling reminder that the regime makes no distinction between friend or foe. Once you cross the invisible line of truth-telling, one day you are the darling of the diplomatic cocktail circuit. The next you are staring through rusted prison bars, waiting for your lawyers to tweet about you because that's all they are allowed to do. Meanwhile, the regime continues to strut across the global stage like a drunk uncle at a wedding, shouting about sovereignty and democracy, while back at home, they can't even allow a prisoner to receive a visit. And the Commissioner General of Prisons, who should be worrying about actual criminals escaping from overcrowded, rat-infested cells, has nothing better to do than personally sign off on banning Job Sikhala from comforting a persecuted journalist. What a shining example of leadership. What a proud moment for the Zimbabwe prisons and correctional services. Truly, this is the Second Republic at its finest hour, banning sympathy, criminalizing hope, and outlawing human decency. In a normal country, a journalist's arrest would spark national outrage. In a normal country, political prisoners would receive visitors, legal aid, and public sympathy without needing a permission slip from the supreme overlords. In a normal country, courts would serve justice, not vendettas. But in Zimbabwe, injustice is the law. Cruelty is the policy. And impunity is the lifestyle of the powerful. The only thing more shocking than the regime's behavior is how many citizens have been browbeaten into accepting it as normal. And for those still murmuring that change will come through diplomacy, or if we are nice enough, they will reform, I present to you today's evidence. Job Sikhala barred from seeing Blessed Mhlanga by direct order of the prison's Commissioner General. A government so terrified of its own lies crumbling that it must silence even the smallest gesture of solidarity. A government so afraid of its own prisoners that it treats a visit as an act of rebellion. Blessed Mhlanga sits behind those walls not because of some administrative error, not because of due process, but because he committed the one crime ZANU-PF cannot forgive. He told the truth and embarrassed them in front of their dwindling audience of international donors and Chinese loan sharks. And he remains in that cell because, quite frankly, too many people who should know better are busy tweeting platitudes instead of standing up to tyranny. If anyone still believes that Blessed will be freed through polite conversations with the regime, they are dreaming. If anyone still thinks that liberation will come from UN reports or diplomatic communiques, they have not been paying attention. Zimbabwe is not broken because of a shortage of well-written tweets. It is broken because power here does not yield to reason. It only yields to pressure, relentless, organized, unapologetic pressure. As Blessed Mhlanga's unjust detention continues, and as the Trevor Ncube crowd wrings their hands and composes yet another strongly worded post, the question facing all Zimbabweans is simple. Are you willing to do more than watch? Or will you continue to outsource your anger to social media while the walls of injustice rise higher around you? Remember, today is day 7 of the Geza Revolution. Day 7 of the national shutdown. Stay at home today, tomorrow, until Mnangagwa leaves office. Stay at home. This week's humiliation of Sikhala should be the final warning bell. There will be no heroes swooping in from the international community. There will be no sudden outbreak of conscience among the ruling elites. There is only us. If we refuse to fight for our freedom, then we deserve the jails they are building for us one by one. Meanwhile, Zimwaves TV remains the last few standing who will call it exactly as it is. The regime is a cowardly crumbling circus. The so-called reforms are a polity scam, and only the people themselves, united and unafraid, can tear down these walls of lies. If you are tired of being lied to, tired of watching heroes jailed while cowards grandstand, and tired of waiting for miracles that will never come, subscribe to Zimwaves TV, where the truth is never behind bars.